Modern comic book publishers, specifically Marvel and DC, are no longer treating comic books as stories, as vehicles for entertainment. They are almost exclusively treating them as collectibles, like their baseball cards. And I do believe that modern comic book collecting kind of is a sucker's game. And I want to talk to Doc about this because you have bought into this game. Maybe not with the modern comic books, but you are an X-Men completionist. You're not only getting the newsstand covers, but you got to have the direct market variant. You want to have a full Amazing Spider-Man run, I believe. And also, you have a wonderful story. You basically were able to buy your house because when you were a wee lad, you were able to mow lawns, buy yourself a copy of Amazing Fantasy 15, and when you sold that as an adult, you were able to fund your house. So comic book collecting is a real thing, but the modern stuff might not be so valuable.
100%. Yeah, I did. I used the proceeds from selling a copy of AF-15 that I had bought when I was like 8, 9. So this would have been like the late 80s. It wasn't, it was expensive, but it wasn't stupid expensive. And sold it once it hit stupid expensive territory. And it basically paid for the down payment on my house. I mean, it didn't buy my house, but it was the down payment towards my mortgage and or a significant portion of it. Now my house is paid off. So my 8-year-old self's impulsive decision to own a piece of history paid for my house today. Yeah, like comic book collecting, it's kind of a little bit built into comic books, but at the same time, we want to make sure that we're doing it right.
Like one of the big things today is, hey, if that character is going to be in a TV show, if that character is going to debut in a movie, you need to get your hands on that stuff. It's going to be really valuable because the show is undoubtedly going to be popular and it's going to be super successful, and that character is going to be more popular than ever. And it turns out that's probably not true. In fact, there was recently an article on Den of Geek talking about this, showing some of the examples of recent shows and movies for Disney Plus and certainly in the MCU, and how it really did affect initially the price of the comic book, but it always comes down. Talking about Agatha Harkness, they said Agatha Harkness played a big role in the Scarlet Witch story, both in comics and on screen, but she's never been a huge seller on her own. Her first appearance in Fantastic Four 94 hit a high water mark in November during the show that was on Disney Plus, selling for $105 before dipping through December, bottoming out in early January at $40. So it had more value and then immediately lost it, once the TV show was off. Sam Wilson, the new Captain America. In theaters now, we got Captain America Brave New World. Sam's first appearance as Falcon came in at Captain America 117, which ended in November going for $200 a copy, dipped through December and January, and then came back up to $275 in mid-February, obviously a bump in time for the movie. Now it's back down to $100 to $150 right now. His first appearance as Captain America came in 2014's Captain America 25, sold for around $10 before shooting, up in February, going for $22 mid-month as the movie was released. We don't have the numbers of the fallout, but that is undoubtedly going to go back down to $10 because all these bumps are very, very temporary in nature for some of these side characters and ideas that, quite frankly, never worked in comic books and aren't going to work on the big screen.
And I think a lot of people took a lot of the early bumps from these characters as the flat rule of thumb for, you're going to have, it's worth X right now. Once the movie gets announced, it, sometimes doubles, triples, 10Xs. And then it starts coming back down, and so you get that initial bump, then you get the drop off, then you get the trailer bump whenever the movie finally releases a trailer, and then it hits that high watermark shortly before the movie comes out, and then it drops back down. Now, with a lot of these books, they'll drop back down to something. It's still greater than that whatever X dollars it started out at. So, if you've kind of increased it, but that's not always the case. And I think that's really something that a lot of people just try to apply to everything. Captain America, when Captain America, I guess it would have been Captain America Comics #1, whenever it was announced, it was already a valuable book. It spiked way up, then it dropped down a little bit, then it spiked up again, and then it dropped back down. Now it's worth more than it was before they made a movie, but it's still not worth what it was at that high watermark. But people started applying that to everything, and I don't think that's right to do. You got to do it based on what character matters.
When you think about Iron Man, Captain America, Incredible Hulk, you go over to DC with Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and obviously there's generating buzz and movies and all that kind of stuff. All those books, all those characters were created during the Golden and Silver Age. The print releases were much bigger, but also people didn't keep their comic books and collect them like that. So the actual inventory of those first appearances are very, very rare. These newer characters like an Agatha Harkness, a Sam Wilson, Naomi at DC Comics, they fast-tracked that out there and, it bumps up in price. None of this stuff is rare anymore. There's no rarity baked into any of it. And you have to realize a Golden Age and Silver Age first appearance is far different than a Copper Age or Modern Age first appearance.
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, with a few exceptions, like a, Hulk 181 or a ASM 300, you're looking at books that have dozens, maybe a couple hundred, like good quality copies, versus modern books where there's tens of thousands of copies of in great condition, and then you start adding in the variant versions, and you're adding a multiplier to that. So there's a lot of, you got to factor in scarcity, and most modern and Chromium Age, Copper Age, even some of the Bronze Age stuff is really, well, let's just say lacking in a scarcity. They are plentiful, and you could get your hands on them super easy.
So what Marvel and DC have done, and they've been doing this for a while, is they've tried to build in new scarcity, essentially with ratio variants. Yep. Yes, you have the A cover, and that's printed out in the hundreds of thousands. But if you get this 1 in 1,000 cover or something like that, it's going to be very, very rare. So they try to build that in, and maybe that's a good investment. And that's kind of what turned you off to being an X-Men completionist. There was an X-Men Gold #1 Jim Lee variant cover, 1 in 1,000 ratio. I believe it cost over $1,000 on day one. Almost none of these ratio variants really hold any type of value over time. Right now, I can go to eBay and get a copy of X-Men Gold #1, 1 in 1,000 Jim Lee variant cover, and I can get it for under $100. It has gone down that much in value over time. So even this fake scarcity that they're building in, and baseball cards are doing the same thing with the chase cards and all that stuff, it doesn't actually build in that value either.
So you got that 1 in 1,000 Jim Lee, the blue and the gold #1s, they both had 1 in 1,000 variants. But at the same time, you look at something like ASM, I think it's 688. There's a J. Scott Campbell Lizard variant that just keeps going up and up and up. And I think it's only like a 1 in 25. I mean, I know that people want to be able to predict things, and you would assume that the one that is more scarce is going to be the one that keeps appreciating in value, but there's really no rhyme or reason to which one of these 95% are going to lose value compared to day one, and which 1 to 2% are going to actually increase value, and the other 3% that fucking just maybe kind of sort of stays the same or fluctuates around the same. There's no rhyme or reason to it. It's just, hey, it's the right book with the right artist at the right time with the right piece of art. Because let's be honest, what is the variant game? It's a speculator's game. You're speculating that the book is, because it's rare, because it has X artist on it, it's going to appreciate in value. It has kind of a similar trajectory as the movie announcements, where they announce it as a 1 in 1,000 or a 1 in 250 or a 1 in 100, and it's up priced on day one on release. It then spikes up a little bit in the following weeks, and then it starts moving. Most of the time it starts moving downward and downward and downward. And, this is the reason why I don't want to play the speculation game or the spec variant game, because it's essentially a game of hot potato where who's going to be left holding the bag. On 99%, 95% of modern variants. And all you're doing is shuffling money around. You're not actually creating value or watching an asset appreciate. You're just pumping and dumping and hoping you're not the one left holding the bag whenever it's all said and done.
Exactly. And they're doing this more and more and more. We just saw the Batman 158, 400,000 sales, and that's a great number, but they had 1 in 1,000 variants. They had 1 in 658 variants. I think they had 1 in 500s, 1 in 250s. They had all these massive variant numbers on them to pump up those sales, to get the A cover out. That will never be bought because that's not value, and speculative value. But perhaps this 1 in 1,000, Jim Lee cover will end up being valuable. There's a lot of evidence out there that states, no, it probably isn't going to be worth the investment. Now, if you love Batman Hush and you want to get a really cool cover that's, with part of your war trophy case or whatever, I say go for it. But if you're thinking about it as an investment or something that's guaranteed to make money, it's fool's gold.
And it's a fool's errand to try to play this game with any amount of scientific accuracy. Look, I'm a guy that I like numbers. I like following trends. I like pattern recognition. And I've been watching the speculator or the variant market for long enough to recognize that, there's a lot of FOMO to it, but at the same time, 99% of the time, as long as you don't play, you're going to win, because you'll just wait 5 years, pick up that variant you want to be the completionist for pennies on the dollar. You could backfill the collection if you really want to. And then every once in a while, you'll run into a book that you got to overpay for compared to what you could have got it on day one. But guess what? You didn't lose all the other money. It easily works out in your favor as the buyer at that point.
And as a collector, this particular speculator scam, the ratio variance, has been almost catastrophic. It stopped you from being an X-Men completionist. You didn't care if X-Men was good. You just wanted the complete run. And when you ran into the 1 in 1,000, it was going to be $1,000 investment for 2 different comic books on day one. And you said, this is the end.
And that was it. There was my line. And see, because once you place something out there that's targeting completionist and you make it unachievable, and you now have an unachievable goal, that's when you get them to tap out. That's a guy that you used to sell 3, 4, 5 copies of the same comic book to at different prices. And now you maybe sell it to him once and he only really cares if it's good.
Absolutely. And then the last thing that they like to do is now no new characters ever really make an impact. Like they just never get a chance, because almost every new comic book, that's probably too much. I would say 50% of all modern comics from DC or in Marvel are considered at a minimum minor keys. Publishers and creators are stuffing these books with first appearances for the sake of having them. The best example being James Tynion's recent Batman run, Punchline, Mr. Teeth, Gunsmith, The Designer, Underbroker, Clown Hunter, Ghostmaker, Miracle Molly, Master Wise, Gardner, The Instigator, Madam Midas, Kid Kawaii, Brainstorm, Razorline. His Batman run only lasted 25 issues, and he had all of those key first appearances in there. No wonder none of these characters ever catch on, even a character like Punchline, which everybody thought was going to be the next big thing at DC Comics.
I remember reading comics back in the 90s. They were doing a lot of this same thing, where every issue they tried to make it a collector's item. And that's what happens when you get into a market that isn't really about the reader anymore. It's just about the collector. And I get appealing to the collectors, but when you try to make everything collectible, nothing becomes collectible because you're overdoing it. And I get it. You're throwing every idea that you have at the wall and seeing what sticks. But if you look at James Tynion's run, How many of those were original ideas? Virtually none. They were all just literally the Temu knockoffs of every other existing Bat villain. They just had now a generic version that he was releasing into it in hopes that maybe those characters would get over. And I get when you're just trying to scattershot to see, I got all these ideas. I'm not sure which ones are going to catch on, but so I'm just going to start scattershotting them. They did this in the 90s too. In the I'd say probably from about 1992 through about 1995, every fucking issue of some book, as long as it was a big enough title, they'd try slamming another first appearance in, or a gimmick cover. They at least varied up in the 90s where there'd be a gimmick cover on this issue, next issue's a first appearance, the next issue was bagged and boarded with a card, the next one had another gimmick cover, and then the next issue had a first appearance again. They tried to do it through just hitting you with every different sales gimmick at a time, and then this one had a variant.
Almost bankrupted the entire fucking industry.
It really did. It really did. It's not a sustainable model, but that's what happens when you start losing your readership, and you have to start, I guess you could say, relying or trying to double, triple, quadruple dip even on top of what you're already knowingly doing with the collector market. You triple down on the collector market as you lose your reader market. And that's where we're at right now.
Me personally, I got 3 little kids. I am not going to spend more than $5, maybe $10 if it's something really cool, on a cover for a comic book. I'm not a hoarder. I'm not really a collector. That's not my mentality, but that is your mentality. You bought in to the idea of being a completionist, to being an enormous collector of comic books, and you have your man cave with, I think, over 10,000 comic books. It's not like you're not a collector, but there even are lines in the sand that somebody with your mentality, that you were able to pay off your down payment on your house with a comic book. You know, obviously you understand the value of comic book collecting, but they are even able to turn off somebody like you and really make you believe it's a sucker's mark in the end.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, this is the reason why I have essentially eliminated my completionist aspects. I drew a line on my Uncanny and all of my X-Men stuff. Everything stops at Uncanny 600. So whatever month that was of whatever year that was, up through there, I could be completionist. But after that, fuck it. I don't care. It doesn't matter. And, I'm still trying to backfill some of my ASM collection. Absolutely. Would I love to replace my AF-15? 100%. But my focus now is on stuff that has a proven track record and stuff that I'm actually interested in. And if I really want to, make money on it, guess what? The market for Wolverine isn't drying up anytime soon. The market for, the first appearance of the X-Men isn't drying up anytime soon. Yeah, maybe Iron Man or Thor wane a little bit in popularity, but Batman's not going anywhere. Superman ain't going anywhere. Now, those might be completely out of my price range, but they might not be out of some of the others, the price range of others. And what is in my price range? Something like Daredevil #1. That's where the value was. That's where the value is, and that's where the value is going to continue being. And that's why their movies keep selling and putting asses in seats. Outside of Wolverine and Deadpool, none of the copper, bronze, chromium, or modern age characters can put a single ass in a seat.
If you appreciate what we're doing here, we've got more to come, because this is the Dok Unfiltered podcast. We got another conversation live right now on Think Critical Patreon, talking about never underestimating the stupidity of Marvel Comics. If you haven't checked that out, there's a link in the video description. Go check us out on Patreon, support the channel there, and get some early access and unfiltered Dok takes on all this wonderful stuff.